Hi there! So today we're going to get in and get a better understanding of golf scoring. So don't worry, even if you're a new golfer and you're not at all comfortable with keeping score while you're out on the course right now, or maybe you just haven't been on the course just yet, what we're going to learn here is so that when you are out on the course, you'll feel comfortable to begin scoring when you feel ready to do it for yourself, or maybe you're out with others who are keeping score and you kind of want to know what's going on, or maybe you even want to be the scorecard manager. So we're going to specifically focus on 3 things today: how scoring works, how golf scoring is unique compared to other sports, and golf scoring terminology. So are you ready to become a golf scoring expert? Let's do it. So today we're going to specifically be talking about scoring as related to the stroke play format. Now that's a fancy term, but that is typically what you will see the professional golfers playing when you watch it on TV over the weekends, and even out at your local course when you see someone and she's playing her own ball and she's counting each of her own strokes. That is stroke play. Now, at the end of each round, that golfer is responsible for totaling up all of the strokes and potentially penalty strokes, we'll get to that in another video, that she accrued during her round. And the total of all of her strokes taken on those 9 or 18 holes is called her gross score. So now, unlike other sports where you want to run up the totals, right? In golf, our aim is to score as low as possible, right? After all, we're getting proficient at hitting that ball high, fast, and far so that we don't have to do it as many times during a round of golf. So now on that scorecard that you'll get when you begin a round of golf, it will have a listing of each of the holes. Probably the scorecard will probably contain all 18 holes, even if you're not going to play all 18. And underneath each of those holes, you write that number. So if it's a 4 on hole 1, you put the 4 under there, so on and so forth. So that's how it works on the scorecard. And then at the end, we're going to take the total. And there you have it. Now that sounds simple, and it is, but there are a few more things we're going to dig into. Now let's talk about this really important term or concept in golf scoring. It is par. Now, you've probably heard that word. We use it in the phrase par for the course, that type of thing. But in golf, it is a powerful word because all scoring, as you see it posted and that type of thing, even on your scorecard, is relative to this important term. So what is par? Par is the expected score on a specific hole for what we call a scratch or a highly proficient golfer, okay? Now, 99% of courses, the holes are going to be designated as either a par 3, a par 4, or par 5. So that means that scratch golfer that I just mentioned should, in all likelihood, be able to score and complete each hole in that designated number. So if it's a par 3, that scratch golfer should, in all likelihood, be able to get the ball from the tee shot into the hole in 3 strokes. Now, I want to say this. As a beginning and an emerging golfer, please, please, please don't worry yourself and put pressure on yourself about achieving par. As I mentioned, par is really a designation for scratch and highly proficient golfers. It is difficult. It's a process. You will get there. But as a new golfer, don't burden yourself with comparing yourself to par. But it is important to understand par because, again, our scoring is relative to that number. So we're going to keep digging into that. Now, as I mentioned, each hole will have a par designation of 3, 4, or 5. Now, we then total those up. So let's say a course has 18 holes. In all likelihood, most courses, or maybe many, but the majority of courses will be a designation of par 72. So that means if you add up the pars for all 18 holes at that facility, it would come up to 72. Now, it is perfectly normal for a course to have maybe perhaps a fewer more executive courses, shorter courses, might be a par 68, and there are some courses that may be a par 73 or even 74. But 72 is kind of the default number that you'll see most commonly, okay? And once again, I'm going to say this again because it's so important. golf scores are discussed and even generated, if you will, relative to par. That's why it's so important. I want you to understand what it is so you feel comfortable with it, okay? So you remember those number lines that we used to look at and study when we were small kids and learning how to count, whole numbers and delving into the negatives. So if you think about 0 as the middle point, the midpoint, and then in one direction we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, those positive numbers. And then in the other direction on that number line would be -1, -2, -3, so on and so forth. That's how I want you to think of par. Par is that 0 point, okay? So if you think of that line, you'll think of how the score moves along that continuum, okay? So now we're gonna start talking about score relative to par. So let's take a look at this example, or think about this example here. Okay, so we're out on the course, and the first hole is designated as a par 4. And the golfer makes a score of 5. That golfer has gone what we would call 1 over, designated as +1. But then the term for that in golf is a bogey, okay? So 1 over equals bogey. Conversely, if that same golfer was on a hole at par 4 and they made a 3, that would be 1 under par, and the term for 1 under par in golf is birdie. So in golf, a plus or minus quickly tells us if we're on one side of par or another. The negative meaning we're below par, which is a good thing, and the +1 is above par, which is a slightly less than good thing, right? So now if we continue discussing that same par 4 hole, let's just say a golfer comes to the par 4, tees off, and they get the ball into the hole in 4 strokes. Now this was a par 4, right? So that means 4 strokes to get in the hole on a par 4, which means they are what we call even on that hole. So that would be represented on our number line as a 0. But what you'll see, people will commonly denote that on the scorecard as a dash. So kind of the same thing. If you're watching golf on TV, they may put a dash, but more often they will put a capital E, okay? Looks a little bit better graphically on TV when they do that. So even is the 0 or a dash. So now let's spend a little bit of time talking about under par in golf, because there are quite a few terms to learn here, and they're colorful and important for you to know. The first term for under par, in terms of under par, we've already talked about. Do you remember? 1 under par is what? It's a birdie, right? 2 under par is called an eagle, and of course it would be designated as -2. Now, 3 under par is termed a double eagle, or also called an albatross. So right now you're probably noticing with this under par thing, it's kind of got this serious bird thing going on right here. I don't know who came up with all that, but it's unique, creative. It's one of the things that makes golf. But they're important to remember because you'll hear people talking about them, and we want you to know what they're talking about and be in the know. So that albatross, 3 under on a hole. And let me be clear, that is 3 under on a par 4 or a par 5, not a par 3. As you can imagine, it is an extremely rare and difficult thing to achieve. And in fact, there have only been a few recorded albatrosses, even at the tour level of competition. Okay, so I'm sure by now you're getting the hang of this thing and how it's all making sense, even though the terms are kind of quirky. And if that's the case, you may be wondering something here. Well, you're probably saying, well, Dr. Greta, if a birdie is 1 under and an eagle is 2 under, okay, which means 2 under, then how could a double eagle, that would make a double eagle if we did the math, double, right, which denotes 2. An eagle is 2 under, so that would be 2 times -2. That would equal -4. So why is a double eagle used to represent 3 under when mathematically it comes out to 4 under? I don't have the answer to that one. I didn't create these things, folks. But I did want you to know that you are right on track if you were kind of going like, well, mathematically that doesn't make sense. It doesn't. But that is the terminology of our 600+ year old sport. And so I just wanted to point that out to you so that in case you were feeling like you were confused or had missed something, you haven't. It's just one of those quirks with golf. Okay, so let's talk about the other side of that number line. If we're not even with par, if we're not under par, that means we must be slightly over par. It happens to everyone, so it's not a bad thing. While the bad news with being over par means we may not be scoring quite where we want to if we're aiming for to get in that par neighborhood. The good news is that I promise you on this side of the number line, the scoring terminology is so much simpler. So as we learned a little bit earlier, +1 or 1 over, the term for that is bogey. Well, the term for 2 over or +2 is double bogey. 3 over, which is a triple bogey. 4 over, a quad or a quadruple bogey. 5, a quintuplet bogey. After that, someone's usually picking up by then. But there are no other fancy terms by that. It's just a multiplier of the bogey. So though it's not where we want to be all the time, it is simpler to understand and remember. So perhaps golf scoring and golf scoring terminology was seeming a little bit odd or foreign to you, and I hope this has really helped you to give you a good solid understanding of it so that you can use it whenever you're ready. There's no rush now that you know. There's still no rush to do it, but maybe you're out there and you want to try your hand at it, or maybe you just want to help out some friends and be the scorekeeper. But whatever the situation is, whatever the case is, whenever you're ready to begin scoring, you are now equipped with the knowledge to do it. So I want you to get out there, keep practicing, keep playing, keep having fun, and we'll see you soon.